Okay. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to confirm, we are presenting our workshop today with the Science Success Center, Overcoming Test Anxiety. So this workshop is scheduled for 1 o'clock. So we have about 5 more minutes. So we're just waiting on people to join us. So just kind of sit tight and relax while we wait to get started, okay? Welcome. Hello. We will be starting right at 1. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. We are the Science Success Center. So this is a workshop on overcoming test anxiety. So if you are part of the Science Success Center, for those students, we will be sharing a participation sign-in link in the chat. Definitely make sure that you sign in to receive your participation credit for attending one of our workshops or events. And we'll be kind of periodically putting that in the chat for everyone. So definitely make sure you click on that. At the end of this presentation, we also have a QR code for you guys as well if you need it. So just to start off with, my name is Darlene Nazario. I am one of the new STEM counselors here at the Science Success Center. Just to give a little bit of background about myself, I did graduate here from Cal State San Bernardino with my undergraduate degree in biology. I was also a first-time freshman and a first-generation college, as well as a transfer student. So I have been with the campus for about 3 years now as a student success coach, specifically focusing on coaching STEM students and how to be successful. And now I'm also working here at the Science Success Center. And I'm really looking forward to meeting some of my new students that I haven't seen yet and just connecting with some of our students on campus. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass over the mic to my lovely co-host, Jasmine.
Thank you. All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine McWells. I'm also fairly new to this position. I'm a STEM counselor as well. Graduated from the University of Laverne with my bachelor's in psychology. Immediately after, I couldn't get enough of college, so I decided to get my master's in college counseling, which I absolutely love. So counseling college students is my absolute passion, and I'm just so happy to be here and to talk about this very important subject as to managing our anxiety, specifically test anxiety.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for that introduction. Just to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what we'll be going over, some of the objectives that we're going to be looking at today. Number one, definitely being able to identify how to identify ways to be prepared for exams in general. Also looking at strategies that you can implement during actually taking the test as well. And then kind of having an opportunity to talk about what you can do to improve, before you take that exam, during that exam, and after that exam. Before we move on, again, if you haven't had a chance to, we will be posting the participation sign-in link in the chat for our students who are part of our Success Center. Make sure that you do fill that out so you can get participation for that. If there are questions that you, don't be afraid to unmute yourself. We can definitely try to answer some of those questions that you have. If not, Jasmine or I will be kind of keeping our eyes on the chat as well for questions that might come up, okay? So to start with, we definitely want to identify and define what test anxiety is, right? So test anxiety is actually a combination of physical symptoms and emotional reactions that can definitely impact your ability to be able to take exams or perform well. And so now that you know what test anxiety is, I want to talk about what symptoms of test anxiety actually look like. So first off, test anxiety can actually be physical. So some of those physical symptoms do include headaches, things like nausea, excessive sweating. I don't know if anyone has ever gotten really sweaty palms on a test day. That is also a symptom. Even actually shortness of breath. Also just intense feelings of dread, and sometimes in some severe cases, some students do experience panic attacks. Test anxiety also has a behavioral and cognitive component to it as well. So that can kind of, depending on it's very dependent on the individual, but in most cases, that can include just having a hard time concentrating, just a lot of self-doubt, negative thinking, comparing yourself to others, procrastination. In some cases, it could even look a little bit kind of like depression as well. There is also an emotional aspect to having test anxiety. So the emotional part can include feeling intense fear, feeling helplessness, having negative thoughts. I think the most common thing that I think I see a lot of students kind of mention is, going blank during an exam. That can definitely be caused by intense stress and fear as well as anxiety, as well as racing thoughts and just overall feelings of stress. Um, Being stressed and having anxiety are two things that can definitely impact how we do well on a test. Keep in mind that having a little bit of stress is okay. It's actually good for us. It allows us to motivate ourselves to kind of get things done. It keeps us safe. It's part of that flight or fight response as well. But stress, can be hurtful when it's too much or too intense and just has a negative impact on your everyday life, including when you need it, when you need to perform very well too, as well. And so over the topic of stress, this is a really great video that really demonstrates how stress can really have a negative impact on how you perform on tests and how it can actually really mess with your memory. So we're just going to go ahead and play this short video for you guys. And please let me know if you guys are in the audio.
We can hear it.
You spend weeks studying for an important test. On the big day, you wait nervously as your teacher hands it out. You're working your way through when you're asked to define ataraxia. You know you've seen it before, but your mind goes blank. What just happened? The answer lies in the complex relationship between stress and memory. There are many types and degrees of stress and different kinds of memory, but we're going to focus on how short-term stress impacts your memory for facts. To start, it helps to understand how this kind of memory works. Facts you read, hear, or study become memories through a process with three main steps. First comes acquisition, the moment you encounter a new piece of information. Each sensory experience activates a unique set of brain areas. In order to become lasting memories, these sensory experiences have to be consolidated by the hippocampus, influenced by the amygdala, which emphasizes experiences associated with strong emotions. The hippocampus then encodes memories, probably by strengthening the synaptic connections stimulated during the original sensory experience. Once a memory has been encoded, it can be remembered or retrieved later. Memories are stored all over the brain, and it's likely the prefrontal cortex that signals for their retrieval. So how does stress affect each of these stages? In the first two stages, moderate stress can actually help experiences enter your memory. Your brain responds to stressful stimuli by releasing hormones known as corticosteroids, which activate a process of threat detection and threat response in the amygdala. The amygdala prompts your hippocampus to consolidate the stress-inducing experience into a memory. Meanwhile, the flood of corticosteroids from stress stimulates your hippocampus, also prompting memory consolidation. But even though some stress can be helpful, extreme and chronic stress can have the opposite effect. Researchers have tested this by injecting rats directly with stress hormones. As they gradually increased the dose of corticosteroids, the rats' performance on memory tests increased at first, but dropped off at higher doses. In humans, we see a similar positive effect with moderate stress, but that only appears when the stress is related to the memory task. So while time pressure might help you memorize a list, having a friend scare you will not. And the weeks, months, or even years of sustained corticosteroids that result from chronic stress can damage the hippocampus and decrease your ability to form new memories. It would be nice if some stress also helped us remember facts, but unfortunately, the opposite is true. The act of remembering relies on the prefrontal cortex, which governs thought, attention, and reasoning. When corticosteroids stimulate the amygdala inhibits or lessens the activity of the prefrontal cortex. The reason for this inhibition is so the fight, flight, freeze response can overrule slower, more reasoned thought in a dangerous situation. But that can also have the unfortunate effect of making your mind go blank during a test. And then the act of trying to remember can itself be a stressor, leading to a vicious cycle of more corticosteroid release and an even smaller chance of remembering. So what can you do to turn stress to your advantage and stay calm and collected when it matters the most? First, if you know a stressful situation like a test is coming, Try preparing in conditions similar to the stressful environment. Novelty can be a stressor. Completing practice questions under time pressure, or seated at a desk rather than on a couch, can make your stress response to these circumstances less sensitive during the test itself. Exercise is another useful tool. Increasing your heart and breathing rate is linked to chemical changes in your brain that help reduce anxiety and increase your sense of well-being. Regular exercise is also widely thought to improve sleeping patterns, which comes in handy the night before a test. And on the actual test day, try taking deep breaths to counteract your body's fight, flight, freeze response. Deep breathing exercises have shown measurable reduction in test anxiety in groups ranging from third graders to nursing students. So the next time you find your mind going blank at a critical moment, take a few deep breaths until you remember ataraxia, a state of calmness, free from anxiety. Check out these videos to learn how stress affects your brain and your body.
So that was just a really great video that we like to show students to really highlight how stress could really negatively impact you as you're taking your exams. So stress is only one aspect that does cause test anxiety. It's also part of the symptoms as well. But there are some other aspects that can actually cause test anxiety, such as perfectionism, right? Just having to make sure that all your notes are perfect, that your schedule goes according to plan, just lack of flexibility, as well as just feeling kind of hopeless if things don't go exactly how you've organized them. As well, also fear of failure is another cause of test anxiety. Fear of failure can include you kind of ruminating on your past experiences with testing. If you kind of already have a history of not doing so well at tests, sometimes that can actually increase or compound that fear of failure, as well as existing anxiety. So a little bit of anxiety is okay. It's pretty normal for everyone to have some kind of feelings of anxiety, right? Especially when something is new or exciting, or you're going into a new situation, or you start a new job, or anything like that. But if you are already prone to being anxious, that is something that can actually affect you how you take tests as well. Also against stress, but also another big one is lack of preparation, right? So lack of preparation can be not having an organizational system, not studying effectively, and not being prepared. So what can you actually do to kind of help with that anxiety and lessen it? Again, a small bit of anxiety is normal and it's perfectly fine. It's when that anxiety becomes a disruptor in your life, as well as when you need to perform. So what can we do to kind of lessen the anxiety? So before you take an exam, we want to make sure that you're doing everything possible for you to have the best possible outcomes. Number one, this is a really big one, being able to organize yourself. So why do you actually need to spend the time to kind of create a time management or an organizational system that works for you? You're going to be you kind of probably have already heard this a lot in your classes and your meetings with professors, or if you've already met with your academic advisors, that time management in college is a big one. Being able to track how you're spending your time allows you to see if you are completing your assignments in a timely manner. It's also really important to give you enough time to actually review for your exams. So keep in mind that not only do you have to juggle attending your courses, you have to juggle projects as well, papers, especially if you're taking science courses, you definitely have a lot of homework as well, online homework, but also having enough time to actually sit down and have specific study sessions to review your exams, right? And so organizing yourself really makes it visually there so that you can see if you're actually making realistic and attainable goals. So how can you actually start organizing yourself? So definitely, just making sure that you are filling out your calendar completely at the beginning of each semester. And also using a calendar system that works for you. I know that it's very popular to do digital. Digital is a big one. Some students still prefer having a traditional calendar, a paper calendar. It's whatever works for you individually. Adding tasks the moment you hear them is such a simple thing to do, but it's also something that students tend to forget to do, especially if you have 3 classes scheduled plus a couple labs in between. Um, you have a lot going on, you have a lot that you have to remember. So sometimes, it's very easy to forget adding that one important assignment. So making sure you add them or write them down as soon as you hear them. Also having a weekly review of your schedule. You definitely want to make sure that your organizational system is flexible. Just because if you're making realistic goals, that also includes being flexible and being able to change your goals as well. Another tip that we recommend is making sure that you break things down into manageable chunks and starting early. I think it's very common for students to definitely block out study sessions into huge chunks, right? Or projects into huge chunks. And sometimes that can be kind of daunting and can definitely lead to procrastination. So a very easy way to kind of manage that is just to break it into smaller pieces throughout the week or the day. Again, having those smaller deadlines makes it easier to manage, to getting things accomplished, but also making some deadlines due the same day that you receive them to get you started. That's a really great way to help beat procrastination. If you know you have a huge lab report due, maybe a small deadline could be starting, actually filling out your lab report outline that day, just to actually get you started, to kind of help prevent that procrastination that can happen. So that's definitely a part of making sure that you're working smarter, not harder. So you're scheduling things in small but short sessions, as well as frequently as well. And kind of segueing into that topic, that when it comes to organizing your study sessions, it's really about quality, not quantity. Studies have shown that small but frequent bursts of work time produces just better quality work. You're also retain information a lot more as well. And it's also much less stressful to schedule small frequent study sessions than to have like a 3-hour study session in the library. So there are studies that actually show that maximum capacity for people in general to obtain and absorb information before you kind of start feeling just like that tiredness where you feel like you're just kind of rereading paragraphs over and over, is actually about 4 hours, give or take, depending on the individual. So if you already know that, you are at your best within a 4-hour time period, then it's going to be really important to kind of break it up so that you actually retain the information and you're not just wasting your time rereading material that you're not absorbing. So that kind of, this is one of my favorite sayings, where I like to tell students that it's always easier to carry pebbles up a hill than having to lug a huge boulder, right? So for example, you could definitely start scheduling yourself a 90-minute study session, and have those spaced out in multiple intervals throughout the day or the week as well. So part of being able to organizing yourself and reducing the anxiety that you have around tests, right, is that you're giving yourself enough time to actually study for the exam. Again, right, you're juggling multiple classes, multiple assignments. You actually have to have specific time set away to study for the test. And so when you organize yourself, basically effectively planning for specific study sessions to dedicated exam reviews. And so those exam reviews can be reviewing and condensing your notes to main points and topics, doing practice problems. A really big one that's really effective as well is making sure that you're doing practice exams. So that's going to be multiple exam rehearsals. So just like in the TED Talk video that we showed you, mimicking the way that you're going to be tested is a really great way to desensitize yourself to the situation that causes you anxiety. So creating exams, practice exams that mimics how you're going to actually be taking them, sitting down and actually timing yourself will help you kind of anticipate what it's going to feel like when you're taking the exam. And also making sure that you are using study techniques that reinforce active recall. Again, active recall is the ability to be able to pull that information out of your brain when you're taking a test. I know as an undergrad, I for sure definitely had situations where I would be studying for like a whole week. But when it came down to actually taking the test, I would just, my mind would go blank, even though I spent a whole afternoon studying like that exactly specific topic. So making sure that what you're using to like how you're studying is forcing you to actually be able to remember it and really working that memory muscle. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jasmine.
Okay, so ultimately, you want to have some effective study techniques, like Darlene was kind of mentioning. When you're studying, you really want to engage with whatever it is that you're studying. And sometimes we may think that, okay, I open up a book, I'm reading it word for word, and we think that we're fully engaged. That's typically considered like a passive way of learning. Passive it's not wrong, it's not a bad way of learning. But when it really comes to memory, you want to utilize different techniques, specifically what's called proactive learning, proactive kind of learning techniques to help really engage and help you connect with what it is you're learning. So, for example, mind maps. I'm not sure if anyone has ever heard of that, but you can utilize something called mind maps where you're taking a particular topic. So you kind of create a circle and you have a topic and you kind of connect, okay, you kind of just make certain connections, like what does this mean and why is it important? And you just kind of create lines. So that's more for like, especially the visual learners out there. It's great to kind of see how a big topic connects to more smaller details. Other things you can do is kind of questioning it, whatever it is that you're learning. So if you are kind of going through, let's just say your textbook, and you're like, I have no idea what that definition is. I don't know what it is that I'm really learning. I know this is something I have to know, but I don't truly understand it. That's a good indication that you don't really know. And who knows, it just might be on the test. So what you can actually do is just write down those questions and try to find the answer yourself. And if you still don't know, reach out to people, form study groups, even going to your professor to say, hey, I'm a little confused with this topic, right? Those are ways to kind of establish that as well. Oh, there we go. There. So if anyone has any techniques or skills that they have used in the past and they feel that it's helpful, put it on the chat. I will be really interested to know, and we can even share that along with everyone else, because we can learn from each other. So what kind of study skills or techniques that you have learned that has definitely benefited you either last semester or this semester? What's working well for you? So yeah, definitely you just want to kind of connect with the content and just kind of practicing and utilizing different strategies and also utilizing the tutoring centers as well on campus. Someone wrote the Pomodoro method really helps. That was from Aaron. Yeah, thank you, Aaron. That's a really good method. I actually just learned about that not too long ago. So I'm really interested to learn more about it. I believe that's a time management, if I'm not incorrect.
Yes, I love that method. It's also called the tomato method as well. So it is definitely a good time management tool to help you make sure that you are staying focused and on task with 25-minute intervals with breaks.
Yes.
Especially if you have a huge project and you're just like, you just can't get yourself to do it. Though that's a really good method. I think one that I want to throw out that I used a lot as an undergrad,
Mhm.
biology is super memory heavy. You are memorizing mechanics and just processes, and you just have to be able to pull it onto a test. So one thing that I did was called a active blind review. And so I think as students, we have a habit of kind of using our notes as a crutch almost. We'll kind of review the material and we'll have our notes, kind of next to us, and we'll kind of glance back and forth. So a way to challenge your memory muscle is to look over the material, read it, and then what you would do is you would actually close all of your notes and put everything away. And then you'll actually, on a piece of paper, just kind of write down as much as you actually remembered. And you'll be very surprised how difficult it is to be able to do that. You definitely feel like you're working yourself, even though you just read that information like a minute ago. So that's a great way to help solidify those kind of mechanical process problems that I know a lot of bio students use for tests.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Darlene. Yeah, so those are excellent strategies, and make sure you ask around. You're not going to know everything, so make sure you ask around and say, hey, what study skills that you have used that's benefited you? That's another way of learning what you can use. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, so I believe this is all, yeah. Oh, I think it was sorry guys, technical problems. I went out of order, but I believe this was part of the
Okay, for me?
yeah.
Okay. So yes, some effective studying techniques. You could do things like self-quizzing, which I personally have used. That's pretty much where sometimes your books will have like a practice test within the books, or if you have like one of those online books, they have like ways where you can practice certain chapters. That's a great way of testing yourself, or you can kind of create your own questions. Really think like the professor. What would the professor want you to know? So you can even create your own practice tests and seeing if you understand the topic. So yeah, you have self-quizzing, practice exams, distribute practice. Flashcards are another great way, especially if it's more like definition heavy memorization, just kind of being able to write down whatever it is that you need to memorize and see if you understand it, see if you have actually memorized it. Practice problems and blind reviews, all are great effective studying techniques. So like I mentioned, whatever it is that helps you to learn, utilize that.
Okay. So not just so part of helping you kind of overcome the anxiety, again, it is having anxiety is normal. What we're trying to do is limit it or reduce it. So one of the things that is very proven to kind of reduce the anxiety that you have leading up to an exam is establishing a routine. Having a consistent routine definitely helps reduce the anxiety, especially the physical symptoms and emotional symptoms that are associated with test anxiety. And so that all falls under establishing a consistent study sessions. So again, making sure you're actually organizing when you're going to study. And then also not only scheduling your study sessions, but actually kind of figuring out yourself as a student, and when your actual most productive times for studying, actually happen. I think there's kind of like this traditional sense that, a lot of students should be studying right after class or right when they get home. I don't know about you guys, but as an undergrad, when I got home, I was exhausted. I had just, gotten through traffic. I was hungry. I was pretty sleepy, but the conventional thought is that you should be able to do your homework after. So as a student, I was actually much more productive right when I woke up in the morning. So I tried to plan, my schedule and kind of my study sessions around those times for the active review part of exam study, not just actually getting my assignments done. I've known some students where, the best time for them to do work is actually at 3 a.m. And for some reason that just worked for them. They were alert and ready to go, and they did their best review during that time. So definitely figuring out your schedule, your biological clock, how you feel, and figuring out when is the best time to schedule those intense study sessions. And you don't want to make them too long. Again, we recommend that you make them short but intensive. Also, another big one that I know it's really hard for STEM majors is sleeping consistently at the same time. I know with a lot of the courses, especially as you move on to your upper division courses, it could be really difficult to make sure that you're consistently sleeping at the same time. That is very important, especially when you're getting ready to take exams, is just having good sleep hygiene. And another thing that I don't think students realize is that if you're used to sleeping at 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night every single day since the semester started, and all of a sudden you know that you have an exam like the next day, you go to bed at 8 o'clock, right? The thinking is, oh, if I got enough sleep early in the morning, like go to bed at 8, wake up early, I'm going to be rested. So actually switching up your routine that way can actually disrupt your sleep, and you actually might get even worse sleep than consistently going to bed at 12, because you disrupt your body's like rhythm. You're used to waking up at exactly that time or going to sleep at that time. So just being kind of aware of when you're actually going to sleep, and trying not to change that way too much before an exam. And again, not just sleep hygiene, but actually maintaining your regular hygiene schedule, such as, keep your if you're exercising, keeping that consistent, making sure you're consistently eating around the same time as well. Please don't eat anything weird before you take an exam. You don't want to have anything like an upset stomach or anything like that before you take a test. And then try not to like over caffeinate or anything like that as well before your exam. And so part of, being able to manage your anxiety is knowing that you have to use your resources. No student is an island. We get much further in our academic careers using our support networks. So a lot of anxiety that sometimes a student will have with test taking is just not knowing what's going to be on the exam. And so reaching out to your professors and actually showing up to their office hours and asking them questions. Professors, really, they do want to make sure that you succeed. And sometimes that it can include, what their expectations are for the exam. If you don't have like previous tests, or if this is your first exam, then definitely going to your professor's office hours and having those conversations like, hey, like, this is what I'm studying. Am I on the right track? Professors will sometimes share with you things that they don't share in class during office hours. Making sure that you're using your tutoring centers on campus, not only here with the Science Success Center, but also your resources through Cal State San Bernardino. Also having study groups and pulling your resources with your peers as well as utilizing your academic counselors, not just for your MyCaps and your PAWS, but also tips on how to effectively study, and maybe looking at, how you're studying and is it effective? Is it really helping you? As well as your professional centers on campus. So part of those professional centers is knowing when to actually seek professional help. Again, having anxiety, a little bit of anxiety is normal for everyday life. It keeps you alive. It helps you with response time and all that good stuff. But when, you're trying all these things, you're doing everything that we've mentioned. And, when it comes down to it, you're just, your anxiety is really disrupting your life or your performance in school, and kind of doing, all these strategies that we're mentioning haven't been helping you. Then, I think it's also a good idea to just reach out to our counseling and psychological services. They do individual and group services for students. If you've paid your health fee, you're eligible for the semester. And it's not just counseling, they help with all kinds of a variety of different stuff, especially test anxiety is a big one that they help students with as well. So just reaching out to those professional services can make a big difference with managing test anxiety.
Okay, so there are different things that you could do to prepare actually just during the exam. So I know for me, I actually struggle with test anxiety, especially when I was in school. So these are some of the tips that I have used myself. But I just want to share this quote, trust yourself, know that you know more than you do, than you think you do. So sometimes we kind of go into an exam, we really study, we study hard, and we may think like, oh, I don't know enough, I don't know enough. But just trust that you do know, and just focus on the positive and know that you got this. So if we can go to that next slide. Almost there. There we are. Okay, so think of your test as like starting a race, right? You don't want to just kind of jump right into that race and just take off, no plan, right? There's actually a mental aspect to starting that race. Same thing with the test. It's all mental. So something that I've done before is a little bit of a mindful meditation. So it's not like you have to kind of bring out your yoga mat to class right before your test, right? All you need to do is just kind of sit at your desk and just take some time to breathe, focus. When we're trying to memorize what we've studied, we can actually defeat the purpose, just like how we saw in the video. When we're overstressed, our brain is just throwing in all types of chemicals that's making us panic and forget almost everything that we remembered. So take some time to just first and foremost breathe. Make sure that you're sitting comfortably. Make sure that you're having steady breathing. You're not doing short breaths, quick breaths, and just kind of center your thoughts. Don't think about the future. Don't think about, oh, what if I don't pass? What if this happens? What if that happens? Just focus on the here and now. You also want to make sure that you review your test questions. So make sure that you're reading fully. I know I have made those mistakes where I just jump right into my test without even reading the instructions. I just assume that I know what my professor wants from me, or I just think, oh, this is easy. I know exactly what needs to be done. Sometimes there's like a little small caveat, to instructions. So you want to make sure that you're reading them thoroughly and you're answering the questions correctly. Make sure that you answer the questions that you know first. Sometimes you may hear that you should answer the questions that you do know last. But I think it's better to answer them first because it's an excellent confidence booster. And this also helps you to avoid time. So when you're answering questions that you already know, you feel pretty good about yourself. You're like, okay, I'm getting the hang of this, I can do this. And that can actually help you, especially when you get to a more challenging question. It makes you feel like, hey, I've gotten a lot of answers that I definitely knew about. Now let me put more of my mental energy, my focus into some of those more challenging questions. So my recommendation is to answer the questions that you do know, answer them first. Another great strategy is called brain dump. So there are some tests where you probably have to memorize some facts like formulas or mnemonic devices, right? So something that I would do is just write down, especially if it was like a math test, for example, I would write down my formulas at like the top of my corner page, or if I had like some scratch paper, I just write it all out, because especially once you're in the middle of a test, and especially if you're getting a little nervous, a little anxious, it's easy to forget those quick memorized formulas, for example, right? So just write it down on a reference sheet or maybe on the back of your test. You can even ask your professor if that's okay with them. But doing that definitely helps you, so you can use that as a reference sheet. So you won't have to try to rack your brain over like, oh, what was that formula again? Or, oh, what was that date, or whatever it is that you're trying to remember, right? Just those quick facts. Also remember, that is not a race, even though I did use a race as an example, but you also just want to know that it's okay to just take your time. I used to think that I had to rush through my tests, and I would always get anxious whenever I see a whole bunch of students finishing the test before me, and then I'm not even focused on my test. So just remember that it's all about the quality of your work, okay? You want to make sure that you're doing well. Even if it means that you have to be the very last person in class taking your test, it's okay. Tell yourself it's okay. All that matters is that I do well on the test. That's literally the only thing that matters right now. So just kind of remind yourself about that. And again, don't forget to breathe, focus, and just finish like a boss. Finally, make sure before you even turn in your test, whether this is online or in person, make sure that you review your test. Make sure that you turned in put down everything, you answered every question. Even if you feel like, oh, I don't know question number 5, so I'm just going to skip it. Don't skip questions, because who knows, maybe you'll get it right. Maybe you'll even get half points. But as a former professor myself, I always tell students, do not skip questions. It's better to just get some points than no points at all, right? So just answer every question and make sure that you check for errors, make sure that you follow the instructions. So after the exam, there's some basic little strategies that you can do as well to kind of help you in terms of your test anxiety. So if we can go to the next slide. So once you're done with the test, just know that, what's done is done. So be sure to just take some time to relax after the test. If anyone is anything like me, I know that sometimes I would really just kind of just focus on my performance on the test. So I would think, oh, I wish I would have done this better. And maybe that question was wrong. I would even go to my book and see, oh my goodness, I answered that question wrong, right? That's honestly not the best way, especially when dealing with test anxiety. Just take some time, even a full day, to just not think about the test, relax, and even reward yourself. Even if you don't feel like you did well, reward yourself. You put in the hard work and you deserve to relax. So don't dwell on what you should have done. Just let your mind and body rest and do something that's fun and enjoyable. Also, once you do get the test, sometimes that takes like a day or maybe a week. Whenever you do get your test, always review the test feedback. Sometimes we may not want to read the feedback. Sometimes we just kind of want to keep that test back in the past and just never deal with it again. But that's not the best way in terms of learning. So be sure to really shift your mind into focusing on your strengths and your areas of growth. So see what you did right, kind of see, okay, I understand this well, and then also look for the errors and see if you can work it again, see if you understand it better, ask questions for your professors or your study group. So sometimes these questions will be reviewed again for like a midterm or a final. So don't just kind of toss it and forget about it. Use that as a resource. And again, ask clarifying questions. And then again, see any mistakes that you made, see mistakes as a learning opportunity. Don't let your mistakes haunt you. It's not a reflection on you as a person. Let it guide you and help you grow as a person. So we all make mistakes, just pretty much learn from it. So those are some strategies that you can use after the test.
I just want to add, I know we get a lot of questions with students who are always asking us like, okay, so how do I build a relationship with my professor? How do I, what can I do to, besides just like saying hi in class or anything like that? When you get your exams and you have questions with like that are exam specific, or you have a question that you got wrong, use that as an opportunity to visit them at their office hours to have them help you understand that question. It's a great icebreaker. It's a great way to start putting your foot in the door to try to develop a relationship with your professor, especially if you're looking for help on the next exam as well. But also if you feel like you want to do other things like get in a lab or get letters of reg, use your exams as a way to start establishing that relationship with the professor.
Yeah, that's a good point. I used to teach at Chapey College, a college course, and I always admire students that would take my feedback and really question me on it and really just see, hey, I don't understand this. How can I do better? And that's the same for a majority of the professors here as well. They want to see their students engage, and they want to see that, hey, you're actually taking the time to read the feedback. And those professors, we really take time to give you feedback because we want you to learn and we want you to do better. We're not, taking points off because it's fun for us, but we do want you to learn and get better. So that's why I said, see any mistake that you made as a learning opportunity, take advantage of that.
So we have reached the end of our presentation. Again, if you haven't yet, definitely make sure you sign in, especially if you are a Science Success student here with the center. I'm going to put that back into the group chat. We do have a couple more minutes. Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to bring up? Maybe some experiences with testing or anything like that? Good. Oh, thank you so much, Bruce. Yeah, so once you finish signing in, if you don't have any questions, you're free to go. But me and Jasmine, we're just gonna hang back. Just stick around and until the end.
All right, thank you, everyone.